Texas is one of those states it's pretty unique in the fact that it's got so much private land, right? Like that's the one issue, that's a drawback, I guess, for me is like, being in the hunting space is like, you don't have a lot of access to private land unless you know somebody. And I'm newer to Texas. I've only been here for a few years. So, that's something where it's like, you got to kind of figure out, what you want to hunt, where you want to hunt, and doing it, and being a newer hunter and being a little bit older, not growing up doing it is, it's a landscape that you have to really figure out. There's a lot of different like ins and outs about it that you just don't know, you know what I mean? Especially just like, oh, I want to get into hunting. Cool. There's so many different facets of it where it's like, okay, well, what kind of gear are you going to get? How are you going to practice? Where are you going to practice? And then aside from that is like, okay, now you want to go hunting. Where are you going to go? So there's not that much public land in Texas. I've done public land hunting in Texas before, and it's fun, but it's just different. It's having access to private land is obviously a lot better. But it's an interesting state for hunting for sure.
It is, and the private land connection is so important for success as a hunter.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah,
and in Texas.
Yeah,
and it's unique, like you said, it's unique to any other state. Mm-hmm. You've heard the statistics thrown out. Texas is 98% privately owned, 96. It probably fluctuates somewhere in there, but it's a big state.
Yeah,
and to be in the upper 90s of private ownership is wild.
Yeah.
And when you compare it to some of our neighboring states like New Mexico, Colorado, and some of these other western states, which are, maybe 50% privately owned, and the access to public land is vast and endless, seemingly. And so how do you navigate the relationships with finding places to hunt? Because that's one of the hardest things
for sure,
and one of the biggest barriers to entry of hunting in Texas. So how do you navigate that?
So, well, there's a couple ways. I'm so fortunate, dude. So like over the last 2 years of like kind of cultivating, just really getting into hunting in general, I've been able to just meet some really great people, whether it's like through friends, like my buddy Ross has a really great piece of property in South Texas. I just recently went turkey hunting there. I'll be there next weekend. And I've been fortunate to be able to hunt, some friends' leases here and there. I've hunted a ranch once in Texas as well too, which was awesome. But really, man, it's just like, again, kind of going back to what we were talking about with like doing good business, right? Like meeting people and just cultivating good relationships and like being on the same page about the things that you want out of hunting, and like making sure that like you're being around people and being in hunting camps with good people, like that's a super important thing. And one thing that's been brought to light recently that I never really even thought about until probably the last 2 months or so. So you have all these private ranches, right? And the main reason why people want to get into hunting is they want to be self-sufficient, right? They want to have a better relationship with the meat that they hunt and that they eat and feed their family. So like in a place like Texas where it's 90+% private, you're getting on a lot of these ranches. And this is not to disparage any ranches by any means, because it's like you got to cultivate your livestock and your cattle and your deer however you feel fit, right? But a lot of these ranches are feeding like GMO corn, soy, wheat, things like that to these animals. So essentially you're kind of getting an animal that's not really being fed the best type of feed possible, right? So I was talking to my buddy Ross, who I was just telling you about. He owns a company called Cannon Republic. They have a feed that's like a proprietary protein blend. There's no soy, there's no corn, there's no wheat, nothing like that in it. So when you look at the quality of meat in comparison between that of an animal that's fed something on the other side of the spectrum, it's a huge difference, right? So that's another thing too that's kind of been popping its head up to me, like, okay, you got to kind of be wary of that. So if you're going to be private land hunting, you want to get good quality meat. So that's another that's like the flip side of the coin that you got to think about, right? Kind of going off on a tangent there, but
sure.
Again, cultivating, making sure that if you do get access to private land, like that's something where somebody's opening up their private residence or ranch or farm to you. So, that's just something that you have to be respectful of. You got to make sure that you respect the rules, you respect the land, and cultivate that relationship appropriately.
For sure. Yeah. When somebody brings you out on their ranch, it's an invitation into the most private and meaningful place that these people have.
Yeah, definitely.
And for good reason, because blood, sweat, and tears in these places.
100%.
And we see, and that's one of the really, really cool things about what we get to do is being invited into these ranches and seeing what these owners have done. And same with, whether when they invite a friend or a colleague or whomever out to go hunt, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. Yeah. It's a really big deal.
Yeah.
What have you seen that surprised you in Texas? So, you're not from here, so let's back up a little bit first. You didn't grow up in Texas,
no,
and you're not you didn't grow up hunting, and so you've got a really unique and interesting story in that we're in the middle of Texas, which is kind of the hunting mecca, and there's a lot of pride and ego that comes with that, which is all good and fun.
100%.
But
yeah, there is.
You've come in and you've kind of if you enjoyed being able to do this, so tell us about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, so again, backing up. So I grew up in Northern California. I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in a small town just outside of a couple major cities. Like Berkeley'd be the closest large city from where I grew up. And growing up, there's just I didn't really know anybody that hunted. I might have had friends that duck hunted from time to time. I never went. So my first time hunting was, just after my 28th birthday, 2 years ago. So when I moved to Texas, like end of 2020, just like a lot of people that moved to Texas, kind of came on the tail end of COVID. That was one thing that I really wanted to dive into. I've been wanting to do it for a few years, and bow hunting in general had always had some type of allure to me. I always liked the idea of, like those backcountry hunts, like the Western hunting, right? Like that's what gets glorified, right? Everybody wants to go out and do that and do a big badass hunt, hike out in the mountains for a couple days or a week or whatever it is. So that adventure always kind of had an allure to me, and got a bow online, ended up just finding like a used one on Craigslist from a guy that I met, randomly sold me his bow, took it to Cabela's, got it set up, shot my first arrow, and I was hooked from there. I've been down the rabbit hole ever since. But it's been a lot of fun, man. It's, again, like you said, it's coming from the opposite end of the spectrum and never growing up hunting. There's so many different things to consider, right? And especially being in Texas, there's a very big pride with hunting. You can hunt year round, which is really cool. You've got a lot of exotics you can hunt. You can hunt hogs on a regular basis as well too. So there's a lot of opportunity if you're willing to go out there and just go after it. You can get on public land. There's a good amount of public land that's not far from Central Texas and Austin, right? You've got Granger, you've got the place out in Old Dime Box that you can go to, actually kind of out towards Bastrop that way. So, it's just all on how much research and time you want to put into it, kind of like anything else, right? How much time do you want to put into researching, what public land hunting is like in Texas? Looking online, calling Texas parks, figuring out different types of regulations, what rules and stipulations that you can and can't hunt in certain areas because they change from place to place. There's a lot that goes into that. So really, it's just been researching, and taking the time to really dive into it. And it's been something that, like, once I shot that first arrow, I was like, man, I can't believe I haven't been doing this my entire life. So it's been a really fun ride, man. And the community and the archery community is amazing. I guess where everything kind of had started for me was going to a total archery challenge in San Antonio 2 years back. Made some friends out there, really had a great time, and that kind of solidified like my love for this. It was my first time doing something cool like that. So spent a good weekend out there shooting a bunch of arrows, kind of figuring out where my holes were in my game. And it all kind of just started with filming myself shooting, seeing what my shot process was like, trying to mirror, guys like John Dudley and Cameron Haynes, all like the big names in the space, Dan Staten from Elk Shape, seeing like what they do well and like, okay, cool. How can I mirror that? Because I didn't have anybody to teach me that. So really, again, it just all goes down to how much time do you want to put into it, and are you willing to get out there and just experience it? You can only learn so much from YouTube. You can only learn so much from podcasts and reading books. You just got to get out there and try it yourself, man. But it's been amazing, man. It's been something that's completely transformed my life for the better. I made some amazing friends. I'm extremely fortunate to work with some really cool companies in both the archery space, the hunting space, the fitness space. So it's been a very transformative experience for me over the last few years.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have a recollection of the moment where I think that as people, we are drawn to the hunt.
Yeah.
We're drawn to the chase,
Mm-hmm.
the harvest. Do you feel that? And if so, why do you think that is? Why are we drawn to such a primal and primitive thing?
I mean, we stand on the backs of people who were hunters and who were, hunters and gatherers. I mean, like that's, it's literally ingrained in our DNA like that. That's why I started the company that I have. DNA Archery is like, it's in our blood. It's in our DNA, right? There's something that is primal about going out, working hard, harvesting an animal and field dressing it and then cooking that meat with friends in a camp at night like that. It's something that's unrivaled. You don't get it in today's society. There's not a lot of things that are very similar in that regard. It's extremely rewarding. Going out and being able to go hunt animals with your friends, share camps, even if you don't end up harvesting anything, the experiences that you get, the lessons that you learn from it that you can build on after that are extremely important. And again, that's another thing where it's like everybody searches for a sense of community, and they search for something that can they can build a passion off of. It's not for everybody, but again, something in me just really clicked, and it's just felt extremely natural ever since I got into it. Again, just some of the friendships that I've made and the experiences that I've had, I would have never thought moving to Texas initially that I would have been able to do it, man. So it's been really cool.
No doubt.
Yeah.
You highlighted a couple things that I think is really important. Mm-hmm. Kind of the byproduct or the cherry on top of hunting and spending time outdoors is the relationships, right? The time around the campfire, the time with the friends, scouting, running around, filling feeders, sharing stories. I mean, that's what the whole thing's about.
Yeah.
And in that, I think that everybody that's hunted and considers himself a hunter or an outdoorsman, but mostly hunting, there's mentorship. You need a good mentor. Have you found a good mentor in hunting or several?
Yeah, I mean, directly and indirectly, I guess.
And do you think that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think everybody needs to have a mentor, right? We live in a day and age where it's like, you can have indirect mentors through, figureheads on social media, on YouTube, whatever it is. So you can really mirror your processes from people who are really doing it well in the space. And that's something that I've been able to do. And again, just like going back to the research and like the practice aspect of everything, archery is something that's it's a diminishing skill. So it's, you have to continually work on it to do well at it. And you have to do the same thing with bow hunting, until you're getting out there on a regular basis, you're not going to really, there's just a lot of learning. There's a huge learning curve for it. And I'm still a green pea, man. I've only been doing it for 2 years. It's like, there's so much that goes into it. I don't necessarily have like a personal mentor. I have a lot of great people, like I said, within the space that I'm able to like bounce ideas on, and through social media, I've made some really great friends, that if I have questions, I'll bounce those off of them. But really just like, trying to mimic and see what the guys in the space that have been doing it for years have been doing, and just trying to soak up that knowledge. That's really been the main thing for me. That's been super helpful, and then taking that and then getting out there and trying to apply it in real life.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that people that are experienced, and I think this goes for hunters that are experienced, and we were talking about landowners. And I think that both of those people, when the successful ones, the ones that enjoy what they do, they want to bring people in, right? They want to bring you, hey, come check this out.
Yeah.
Hey, let me show you what you could do a little different.
Yeah.
Let me give you a tip here, or come hang out and you bring your family and run around the ranch or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, right? That the people that are the most successful and that also seem to have the most joy in their life are the ones that want to bring you in.
Yeah.
Have you found that to be true in the bow hunting space?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime I've had the opportunity to go to somebody's ranch or farm, I mean, they're some of the most giving people that you can find, and I think that just speaks true to what hunting is and being a good steward of your land is. It's an extremely, they're both hard endeavors, right? They take a lot of work. So, it builds up a really good base for like a sound character, They're people that you can rely on. They're people that you can respect because, they wake up on a daily basis and they work their asses off to keep that land in good shape, whether it's, like you said, stock and feed, taking care of the land, clear cutting, burning, growing plots. I mean, man, there's just so much that goes into it. It's very hard to do. So it's really cool when you do get that opportunity to go check out somebody's land and see all the hard work that they put into it, and then you get to see what fruit it bears. But yeah, man, it's always been a really cool experience to be able to see that. And Texas has some very unique landscape. It's extremely beautiful. It's hard hunting. There's a lot of stuff you got to look out for when you're out hunting from time to time. But yeah, man, it's really cool to be able to see how well somebody can take care of the land, and then being able to be on that with them, and have them show you through what they've been able to cultivate is a really cool experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about your turkey hunt. Where were you at in South Texas? Where was the ranch?
So it's out towards Pearsall, just south of San Antonio. My buddy Ross, he has a really nice farm and ranch out there. Unfortunately, we didn't end up shooting a turkey. That was my second turkey hunt. I went turkey hunting last season as well too. But it was cool, man. It's my first time using mouth calls. Been trying to figure that out. Getting the hang of that. We went out for 3 days. First day we had, I was calling back and forth. I had a couple of toms gobbling back and forth with me. I almost called one in, just couldn't get them close enough. And then as we kind of progressed through, they kind of got a little quieter and quieter. So early in the season, we went out first weekend or opening weekend. So hoping next weekend it'll be a little bit better opportunity out there. Yeah. But that's just how it is. You're not going to go out every time and kill something. It's not what Instagram and what YouTube is going to show you. Sure. Like you're going to see all the highlights. You're going to see the big bulls, the big bucks, the big turkeys that everybody's taking down. But you're seeing the small minority and the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are going out and hunting. Not everybody comes back successful. So that's something that you have to understand when you're getting into it, is like you're not going to win every single time you go out. You're going to get skunked and you're going to get your ass handed to you. Like I went elk hunting last year for my first time as well too. Went out for 8 days. It was an amazing experience. Got to spend some really good time up there, and we saw elk, got in on elk. Had a few opportunities, but didn't get to draw my bow back. But, the experience that I learned from it was, amazing. That's, again, not something you're going to get just from surfing the internet. Going out there and trying it is what you need to do. So, but I'm the kind of person that's like, I'm fine with that. If I don't come back with something, it's unfortunate, but, you just learn from it and you build on it, and hopefully you make better decisions on the next one.
What did you think of the South Texas landscape?
That's beautiful, man. I love Texas. I always say I was switched at birth, man. I should have been born a Texan for sure. I feel like I assimilated really well, man.
No doubt.
I love it out here. Over the last couple of years, or actually the years leading up to moving to Texas, I'd gotten the opportunity to travel here a lot for work. And I always felt a really good sense of community in Texas in particular. And I think it just has to do with good Southern values, and people raise their kids well out here. Mm-hmm. And it was just something that I felt was missing where I was living in Southern California at the time. So I knew on my first trip in 2018 when I had come out here for work, I knew I was going to move out here. I didn't know when, but I knew I was. And once COVID hit and was going through what I was going through out there, jumped ship and just moved out. I knew I had two friends that lived out here at the time. So I was like, you know what? I got two people I know out here. I'll move out. I'll figure it out. And, luckily I did. And it's been great, man. I have no reservations with coming out here, man. I love Texas.
That's good. That's the story of a lot of folks, right?
Yeah.
I guess you didn't head west. You headed east. But
I did.
The idea of head west, my son, you'll find what you need.
Yep.
That's good. So you saw some turkeys down in South Texas. Didn't quite get close enough to put a shot on them, but you did see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
and you had a good time.
Yeah, man, it was great.
And were you guys in the hunting in the morning or in the evening?
We do both, man. I hit it both times every single day. AM hunt, PM hunt. I'll take a little break in the afternoon, get a little bit of rest, get some food in me, and then I'll get out there. I got no problem sitting out for hours on end, man. I like it. I can sit down perched under a mesquite tree all day long.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Worst places to spend a day than under a tree. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. You could be, an unsuccessful hunt is better than any day in the city.
That's the deal.
You can spend some time out there and just be by yourself, be with your thoughts. That's super powerful, and that's got some benefits in and of itself as well too.
I think a lot of people are always surprised at the gear and the broadheads for turkey hunting.
Yeah.
So to walk people through what a broadhead for a turkey hunt looks like, how does this work? We all know the traditional, arrow.
Yeah.
But that's not what you have. So what is it?
It's a little different. So, I mean, a lot of people like to use what's called an expandable broadhead. So you've got fixed blades where the blades are just straight fixed, usually just one solid piece. Expandables will expand on impact. So, some people like to use real thick 3-inch, 2-inch cutting blades on those. It's fun, man. They call it the poor man's elk hunting. You're calling back and forth, things like that. Not quite like elk hunting, but it is fun, man. So there's two different schools of thoughts there. Some people swear by fixed blades. I personally like fixed blades a little bit more. It's just less that could potentially go wrong. But I use Sever broadheads. They're a really solid company. They're what's called a rear deploying broadhead. So they have actually a set screw in there that you can pop in, and you can use it so you can broadhead tune with it. It's very, very minimal work to be able to tune it from a field point, which is like what you would practice with. And they make really good quality broadheads. So that's what I use. That's what I had on me last weekend, and we'll run those again this next weekend once we go out there.
What do you think? What about the guillotine?
That's
broadhead.
That's a big one.
You ever use that one?
People, I have not. Actually, one of my buddies brought that out there. It's looks like a big old whisk. It's about 3 inches, 4 blades on it, and that's where people go for the headshot on those ones.
Right.
You do that apparently just to save meat so you don't mess it up too much. But me personally, I like to just go with the minimal amount of variables that can mess up a shot. There's too many things going on already. So the deploying Sever broadheads are my favorite for now. But yeah, those guillotine ones are pretty pretty wild.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, they are. What about yourself? You been turkey hunting lately?
No, I haven't gone this year. Been talking about it with some buddies and some other folks, and we're thinking about going out, and we've got some upcoming listings in the hill country and otherwise that are not quite on the market yet. And so we're thinking about going and actually filming a couple hunts to use the hunts for marketing in the future. And so maybe we'll do that.
And are those properties that you guys sell, are those hunting properties in particular, or are they, how's that whole landscape look?
So we sell land and live water would be kind of the umbrella of what we do. And so that could be a working cattle ranch, and we sell all over the state. So top to bottom, east to west, all over. I think we have 15 or so agents all over the state. Nice. And so that could be a hunting ranch. Yeah. We sell low fence hunting ranches, high fence hunting ranches with exotic operations or whitetail operations, working cattle ranches, hay operations, and kind of everything in between.
Yeah, so you can sell them pretty much a turnkey setup if they wanted to.
For sure. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. We usually have a few turnkey ready to go hunting ranches in our index of listings at any given time.
Nice.
And that's what some people want. Some people want hey, I want to be able to go in and bring my duffel bag and my gun or bow and be able to hunt, the next day.
Yeah.
And some people want to tinker, right? And they want a blank canvas, if you will.
Yeah.
And be the artist of the ranch and put their own spin on it and have their own ideas. And both are good.
For sure.
But we do both.
Nice, man. Yeah, I could see, definitely. I could see the allure for both, right? And I think people give high fence ranches, they give it a lot of flack because, it's definitely the easiest way to go about hunting something. If somebody's newer, and you've got the bread to be able to pay for it, it's a good opportunity to get on and maybe go shoot some hogs or an exotic or whatever you can. But again, the work that goes into cultivating something like that is an art. Seeing I've been fortunate enough to talk to a good amount of ranch hands and guys that manage some pretty large ranches, and what it takes to make an operation like that work properly and manage the livestock that you've got there is it's quite the undertaking, man. It's impressive.
It is. Mm-hmm. It can take a village.
Yeah,
it can take a village.
Yeah,
certainly,
absolutely.
And the high fence ranches. People do say that, and that's fine. Most people haven't. Go try to hunt an animal on 1,000 acres, high fence or not.
Yeah.
And even if it's a high fence, it's still a hunt probably.
Yeah. That's a good chunk size of land.
For sure. No doubt. And, people have their opinions on that, of course, and all of them are fine, I'm sure. But that area down in South Texas, man, that's cool country.
It's beautiful, man.
Cool country.
It is beautiful, yeah.
And people love that area, and for good reason.
Yeah.
Where were you at in Colorado for this elk hunt that you did?
So we were in like southwest Colorado. So when you drive through Texas, you'll go up through Raton, cut through to Colorado, and then it was close to Durango. Mm-hmm. So it's probably about 2 hours or so past Durango once you get through there, man. But it's an amazing part of Colorado, man. I mean, we camped out at about 11,000 feet on top of this mesa, and once you get through that first day's hike was pretty grueling. We ended up making a bad decision to deviate from our initial plan because we had a buddy that lives in the area, and he gave us really good intel. Once we got there, we were on elk the first few days, which was great. But from where we initially had drove into to where we had to hike there was a hell of a mission to get there. So that took all day, and we were pretty beat up after that. But luckily, we trained well for it, so we were able to handle it. But that first day when you're in elk camp and you wake up in the morning and you pop your tent open or hop out of your hammock and you see this, massive swath of like just beautiful meadow, evergreen trees out there. And you hear elk bugling in the morning or at night during the camp at camp, like it's unreal, man. I remember sitting down. So very first time hearing an elk live was our second day of hunting, and I'm sitting on the edge of this timber, kind of perched in between two trees, and sun's going down, and I got this huge owl flying over me, like 5-foot wingspan, massive. He's kind of just curious. He's looking at me, flying up and over me. And I'm just kind of like sitting, looking at him. He's super curious. And then all of a sudden, man, I hear this elk bugle, just let one rip right across the meadow from me, probably about, a couple 100 yards, maybe a mile away, something. And I was just in awe, man. I was like, yep, this is why people do this every year. It kind of takes out any negative thoughts about how hard something like that can be when you hear that. It kind of it's validating, especially again, like being older and not necessarily having someone who can show you the ropes like that, like a parent or a grandparent, to be able to get out there and do that, with some good friends. Obviously, we're all pulling ourselves together and trying to figure out how to make it work. It was 4 of us there, and it was all our first time elk hunting. But it's validating, man. It's like, okay, cool. I can figure this out. Like we're in it. We're close. You can hear elk bugling, but it's a magical experience, man. It's really cool. It's something that I wish everybody could experience at least once in their life, to be able to get out there and bust your ass and be able to hear something like that, man. It's really cool.
It is magical. It's
is
an amazing thing.
It is.
How deep were you guys?
So where we started, we were probably about. So we started at about 8,000 feet. We hiked up to 11.2 on the mesa. We were side hilling most of the day, which is brutal. But I would say, man, we were probably about 5-6 miles in. Mm-hmm. And then, every day, back and forth from camp, depending on where we were at, you're putting 5-10 miles on a day, easily. So you're kind of just making your decision of, all right, am I going to end up hiking in, sitting, coming back to camp in the afternoon, or am I just going to take all my stuff with me and then just stay out for the entire day and then just come back? And again, it just kind of depends on, what the land gives you that day. But it was a really cool experience again, man. Like, we were a good amount of miles out there, and being able to just be in nature and just sit there, put a couple stalks on elk was really fun. I made a couple of mistakes, where we were at in the national forest where we were camping. They had a logging company that went through there, and they kind of botched the whole job. The state had contracted this company to come out there, and this is from like talking to a bunch of guys that hunt the area on a regular, every year. Usually it's not like this. So there's a lot of dead felled trees from, beetle rot and stuff like that. And they pretty much just left everything that they felled. So you had tons of just pine trees all over the ground. So you kind of just like hopping over trees and trying to be quiet. You got just deadfall everywhere. It's just old, so it's loud when you're hiking it. But put my first stalk on an elk, and I ended up walking down a game trail and hearing a bunch of them come up over this ridge by me about 70, 80 yards away. Got close about 40 yards, made a mistake, was a little bit too loud on my stalk and spooked them. But, again, experience and just, seeing what works and what doesn't work,
Sure. And that's kind of par for the course for a public land elk hunt in the mountains,
That's exactly it.
The statistics there are less than, they're single digits.
Yeah, they're pretty, they're, 10% is good.
Yeah.
If you can get a spot that's around 10%, you're like, okay, that's, they get low though. They definitely get into the single digits, especially, over the counter public land elk hunt is one of the hardest ones that you can do.
For sure. I remember reading a statistic. I think it was, I don't know if this is actually accurate, but my memory, I'm going off of memory, and it was for a over-the-counter public land elk hunt with a bow, 6x6, to get harvest anything bigger than a 6x6 was like 2%.
Yeah.
Really, really small numbers. And most people go and they don't even see elk. So what a neat thing that you guys got to experience that.
Yeah, we were super fortunate, man. We had again, just making friends with guys that were there. A lot of them that had been hunting the area hadn't even seen elk, up until I think this was maybe the fourth, fourth day that we ended up chopping it up with these guys. And they hunted on a regular basis, so that was, again, it was validating to know that like we were doing the right things and making the right moves. It's public land is definitely hard, especially when people start to pull in. We went there right for opening day. Or opening weekend. We got there 2 days before, so we had a lot of time to kind of survey and glass, kind of figure out where we wanted to be at. So we were in a good position before a lot of other guys were. Come day 4, 5, 6, everybody's up there already, and they've got their setups and they're pushing elk. So when we left on the end of our 8th day, we didn't end up seeing elk the last couple of days that we were up there, and we were just kind of scratching our heads like, damn, where are these? Where'd they go? And there's a decent amount of private land kind of, bordering the national forest there. And they had all pushed down to like 8,500, 9,000 feet, which is, way above where we were hunting at. So that was kind of interesting and good to know though, as well too, for next year. It's like, okay, maybe after a couple of days, once these things start getting pushed, hover right above where the, borders of private public, and see if you can't get something coming up from the lower elevation up to the top, up to the upper elevation. So, again, good experience.
Definitely. And what an elk hunt will humble you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Watching an elk across a valley. Yeah. You're on one side of the valley, and elk's on the other, and watching him just jump up this mountain. A literal mountain. Yeah. Effortlessly. Yeah. And it would take you and me all day. Yeah. And hours. Hours, and they get up in 30 seconds. 100%. It's what an amazing animal. Yeah, it's beautiful, man. And that's, again, where it's, there's a big renaissance within the hunting space where it's like, being in shape and staying on top of your fitness game to ensure that like you can handle stuff like that. There's two schools of thought there. There's the guys that have been in it for a long time, and they either just hunt whitetail or, they do elk hunt, and they're like, well, I don't need to be in that good a shape. It's like, it's to each his own. It's like whatever really works for you, by all means do it. I myself personally, I've always been within the fitness space, whether it's been for my job, my career, or it's just been my passion for it. I've loved working out since I was a kid. So that's just something where it's like, that just made sense to me, like watching guys like Cam Haynes and Dan State, and these guys bust their ass every single day of the year to make sure that they're in the best shape they can be.
and they're successful. You know, that's a recipe that works. You know, it makes sense for me too. It's like, I don't want to make this any harder than it needs to be, right? So if I can get whatever edge that I can in the time leading up to it, I'm going to do that. So
you think it's about the edge. Any edge you can get, you need to take.
100%.
And fitness is a big part of that, you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're living in it 365. You know what I mean? I only get to go a week, maybe 2-3 weeks if I'm lucky. You know, coming up this year, hopefully I can spend about 3 weeks out there if I can. Work permitting, but I don't get to spend time like that, especially living in Texas. I mean, it's about as flat as it gets. You know, good elevation is maybe 1,000 feet out here from time to time. So especially in Central Texas, you know, you don't get a lot of elevation gain and loss when you're out trail running or hiking or whatnot. So trying to figure out different modalities to kind of mimic the type of terrain and like training for specificity is really important. You know, so there's a couple different ways you can cut that up. But yeah, man, I think that's a really big game changer, is making sure that you're training specifically for what you're going to be doing. And if you can get any little bit of edge that I can get, whether it's the gear that I'm utilizing or within my training, I'm going to exercise that.
What role do you think that plays into the confidence that you have in yourself?
It's huge, man. I mean, anything that you can go into where you know you're prepared is extremely important, you know, and I'll kind of go to like my first hunt that I was ever on, right? Like my first whitetail I ever shot, you know, like
Tell me that story.
Yeah. So from the time I picked up a bow to the time I first shot a whitetail was about 8 months. And that was something that I did not want to rush. I knew that like whenever I got the opportunity to go on my first hunt and draw back on an animal, I don't want that little voice in the back of my head saying, you should have trained a little bit harder for this. You should have shot your bow a little bit more. You should have tuned your bow a little bit, but I just didn't want any of that. You know, again, there's tons of variables that can go wrong on a hunt already that'll work against you. So, you know, you can only, if you can stay on top of the things that you can control, that's just going to quiet those voices. You know, I had a buddy who has a lease out in Junction, and again, super gracious to be able to hunt out there in hill country. Like Texas hill country is some of the most beautiful country in the state or in the country. Like it's amazing. And we were on our morning hunt, second day, and we had a handful of doe coming through like at first light. Nothing really, you know, nothing that we wanted to shoot. And probably about 9 o'clock, it was getting real quiet. So we were like, all right, let's pop out of the blind. Let's go run back, get some breakfast, and then we can come out and kind of just maybe do some, you know, put some stalks on and see what we see. And we popped out of the blind, and sure thing, 45 yards away, we saw a whitetail just on the other side of this fence. So we stopped, real quiet. We looked at each other, gave me the nod. He was like, yeah, let's start to put a stalk on. So closing at 30 yards, man. And I was just like, I had no doubt in my mind. I was like, I could shoot this thing from 45 yards. I could shoot it. I ended up shooting it from like 30 yards. And I was just 100% confident. Like, I know I can put pin on target, and I feel good on this. And, you know, that's exactly what I did. You know, God willing, I put off a good shot, put a double lung shot on him. She ran about 200 yards or so, died real fast. And man, it was just an amazing experience. You just get like this rush of emotion that like, it's a heavy thing. You know, you're killing something. You know, it's not, you're not doing it for fun. You're doing it because like for a specific reason. Like I want good, clean meat, and I want to be able to have a better relationship with the stuff that I'm putting in my body. So, you know, you get this rush of emotion of like excitement, but also you feel really somber and kind of melancholy about it as well too. But you know, nerves, shakes, things like that. It's a pretty intense feeling, man. But it's, you know, it's something again that like I spent 8 months busting my ass. You know, went to San Antonio and spent, you know, a whole weekend at Total Archery Challenge training for that.
Right.
I went to one in Utah, traveled to Utah and did that for a weekend with some friends, which was great. I'm on the board of directors for the Austin Archery Club out here in Austin. It's 60 acres. It's all outdoor, open range. You got 2 30 target bow hunter courses. It's a really, really cool piece of property if you ever get the chance. We've talked about it before, but we got to get you out there. There's not a lot of places like it. So it's really cool. You know, you get some really good challenging shots. And I spent, as many weekends as I could out there practicing. There would be Saturdays that I would spend the entire day there, and I would shoot a couple hundred arrows just getting that practice in and making sure that I felt super comfortable with the equipment that I had. And again, leading up to that first hunt, I felt very confident in that. So confidence is, it's paramount. It's one of those things that you can control with the right variables and the right amount of effort. And if you just slowly compound that effort on a daily basis, it's just like laying a brick down for a home. At some point you're going to get to a point where it's like you built a really good foundation and you should have that confidence. So it's all about the effort that you put into it.
I love that. I'm going to read you a quote and I want you to tell me what you think about it.
Okay.
The archer is the true weapon. The bow is just a long piece of wood. What do you think about that? Do you think that's true?
Simplistically, yeah, right. It's it's a tool, right? It's an extension of its user. It's like it doesn't matter what kind of tool you have if the person that's operating it doesn't have, again, the skill and the experience and the time put behind it. That's all it is. It's a piece of wood. It's just like a firearm. If it's just a piece of metal, it's got bullets in it, but it's like if you don't know how to properly use it, you're not going to be able to put lead on a target. Just like with a bow, you're not going to be able to take a stick and string, or with a compound bow, you're not going to be able to take that and put an arrow on target. Plenty of guys botch 10-yard shots because of nerves and anxiousness and not being able to control breathing properly and get out of their head and just be focused and dialed into the moment. So yeah, in its essence, yeah, that's true, man. It's a tool and it's only going to be as good as its user.
That's good. Tell me about your company that you've started.
So I started DNA Archery a little over a year ago. Again, just being deep in the rabbit hole of loving archery and doing what I was doing on social media. It all started I was just filming myself at the archery range, just shooting. And, just kind of showing I was using it for my own shot process, right? So something I would do a lot when I was first shooting, I'd get my tripod, put my phone on there, and I'd have a notebook with me. So I would shoot around and then go up to the target, and I'd actually draw a little mock target on there and then plot where my arrows were. And then if I had, a shitty end, I would go back to the footage and be like, oh, I punched my trigger there, or I wasn't anchoring right, or I jerked on this motion. And then I would just at some point I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to just start posting these, just showing my process. Right. And it evolved into, it's cool, man. It evolved just really organically. So again, being older and not being in archery when I was younger, I'm in a different position than a lot of other people. So it's everything that I was talking about earlier with how complicated it could potentially be from the outside looking in to get into archery and bow hunting. I wanted to kind of clear up any mysticism for people. So it initially started with me showing my process for shooting, and then being oh wow, there's an open niche here for guys like me, right? Adults that, are in archery or want to get into archery and bow hunting, but don't necessarily know what the blueprint is for that, right? So that's kind of where DNA Archery had evolved from there. So started the brand there with a couple of friends at the time. And the whole premise was to showcase content that would be helpful for other people that were in our position, because we were all newer bow hunters as adults. So, the company has evolved, but it's really always, the basics of it is, we will always work on giving either gear reviews or content geared towards the newer archer and the new bow hunter to really help kind of pave a path for them so that they can build their own self-reliance to getting out into the field themselves. So that's kind of the premise behind the company.
I love that, man.
Thank you, man.
That's great. That's a big deal.
Yeah. I'm super fortunate, man. Again, being in it for a few years, I have a really deep passion for this, man. It engulfs my life. You ask my fiance, it's she's got to kind of pull the reins back on me from time to time, because I can be a horse with blinders on, and
sure,
I feel like I'm so far behind the 8 ball by a lot of people, just because again, I just didn't grow up in it. So there's always something for me to learn. There's always something for me to do. So my brain's always racked trying to connect the dots. I love connecting dots, whether it's between good people or businesses or myself. It's I love figuring out how to build a business and connect the right dots, you know, and build out like really good value-based content for people. It's a really fun thing for me to be able to do. But yeah, man, there's just always something to do, man. But you know, feeling like I'm behind the eight ball, I think is good. You know, I'm just competitive by nature. So, you know, again, just fortunate enough to be in the position that I am and just be able to work with some really cool companies that believe in me and believe in the brand and what we're doing. So, you know, it's a really cool journey to be on.
That's great, man. It's a big deal.
Appreciate it, brother.
With that being said, I want to paint a picture, and you can connect the dots on this, because I think there's a lot of people. Obviously, this is why you started this, and so we know this to be true. But there's a lot of people that are on the sidelines, right? They did not grow up hunting.
Yeah.
They don't believe they have access to the things that they need to start hunting. And so to that person, what do they need to do? What are the misconceptions they have with starting their journey? So what's step one?
Man, getting out of your own way, really. You know, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too, is you think that everything needs to be perfect in order for you to start, right? Like, I can't go hunting because I don't have the perfect bow set up. You know, I don't have a brand new bow. You know, I don't have the right gear I need. It's like, you just got to get started. You know, like once you get started, and I'm a firm believer in this, you know, whether you believe in God or you believe in the universe or whatever, I'm a firm believer in that. Like if you show up on a regular basis, you put that time in and you keep stacking those little wins, you will attract the things that you want in your life, right? So it's, and I can only speak from my personal experience because that's what's happened for me and just a little bit that I've been able to do in the last couple of years. But I would say first, get out of your own way and just get started, right? Do your research. You know, there's nothing that you can't figure out for pretty much free nowadays, like utilizing YouTube, podcasts, picking up a book, an audio book, whatever it is. You could spend, you know, a month's time if you really put the time into it in a month and dial in everything that you need. You know, build a Word doc. This is basically what I did. I built a Word doc and I looked online. Again, like people in the figure space. So like, you know, listening initially to the Joe Rogan podcast, which is like the first thing that introduced me to bow hunting, like a lot of other people, right? Sure. So like you hear about Cam Hanes, right? So that's where, you know, that was where I started like, okay, well, who's Cameron Hanes? Like, what does he do? You know, like what does he shoot? You know, what are his processes? And then you find out, you know, from there you can go into like all these other guys, like Dan Staton from Elk Shape. He's awesome. The guy's a badass, works his ass off. He does tons of gear reviews. Like the dude knows his shit really well and he's super successful elk hunter. Like he puts out a lot of free content for people. That's really good knowledge. So utilizing YouTube a lot is great. You know, there's John Dudley has School of Knock. You know, he teaches you the absolute perfect basics for everything that you need to know. So this, you know, first thing, again, get out of your own way. Second thing is put the time and effort into the research and, you know, start to itemize and just put out those bullet points. Cause like you can start to conceptualize things in your head. And when you start to think about it, it can be overwhelming, right? Like that could be with anything. But once you get it on paper and you start to put down some bullet points, it starts to be a little bit more clear. So once you do that research, you can kind of start to put a game plan together from there. So a little long-winded, but like that would be my, you know, my step 1 and 2 in order to figure out like, where am I going to start, you know? And then once you figure out where to start, you know, just start to put that plan into practice.
And they don't need to go buy the best and biggest bow. No. Anything will do, right? No. Just the bow that you got's the bow that you need.
Correct. You know, obviously you want to buy like a decent bow that works properly, right? Take it to a good pro shop. If you live in Austin, go to Archery Country. Those guys are awesome. They'll take great care of you. You know, ideally I would say go to a pro shop and not like a big box, like a Cabela's or a Bass Pro, and that's nothing against them whatsoever. But pro shops, those guys are dedicated to their craft and they absolutely love what they do. And that's not to say you can't get one from one of those, but like you're going to get a lot better attention and guys that really, really like what they do from a pro shop. So,
and they're local and you know, to the area, and you can use them as, you know, for questions and things.
Absolutely, man. Like that. Yeah. Like that's, I mean, I've learned so much from just like hanging out at Archery Country and just picking their brains there. they've been super helpful with like any gear question that I have. If I have issues with my bow or anything like that, like those guys have been integral for me. So it's been really cool to be able to build a relationship with them and that crew over there. But yeah, man, whatever you got, if it's, as long as it's tuned well and, everything works well on it, that's all you need. Like you can get down the rabbit hole from there and start to invest in a better gear, but really just get out with what you got and start putting some practice behind that bow.
With what you're doing at DNA, are you going to be offering services to train people and clinics or one-on-one? Is that going to be in the cards where people could reach out and do that?
I always tell people if they have questions or anything like that, I got an open door. I always want to make sure I'm there to help people, because when I was just learning and getting started in it, I did the same thing. I would hit people up, and that was really cool about the space initially that I found is like you can hit guys up that have like hundreds of thousands of followers and they'll get back to you. Like they're just normal people. And again, that kind of just goes back to what hunting is. It's like it humbles you and it builds a really good character. So, not everybody's like that. Obviously, there's exceptions, but I mean, for the most part, like anytime I had a question, if I see somebody post something up and I don't know what it is or I have a question about it, I'll shoot them a message. Like they would hit me back, and I'm still a nobody, but like even when I didn't even have a following or anything, like people would hit me back, and it was super cool. Yeah. So I always tell people like, hey man, if there's ever any questions that you have, feel free to hit me up. Like I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. That's what I'm here for. As far as putting on clinics and stuff like that, I still don't look at myself as a professional by any stretch. I have so much to learn still, but being able to partner up with other companies and working within their network and being able to leverage some people within their network, it's definitely on the table. It's something that I've talked about to a couple of different companies. So there's some things there that we've been conceptualizing and looking to put together. So in the future, you may see something like that.
Cool.
Being in the fitness space for a long time, that's something that like I am very comfortable with. So like as far as like fitness training, stuff like that, I do that. I do have a couple clients that I work with from time to time and help train for, whatever it is that they're looking to do. But yeah, man, so they're again, we have been talking about doing some type of clinics. So hopefully in the future, we'll be able to have that come to fruition. That would be a lot of fun, man. I would love to be able to get a lot of people together, and I think we could do some real good there.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Getting
That's
together.
What it is. Absolutely, man. It's about it. Again, for me, like the camaraderie that you get with people, and the self-reliance that you can build for yourself is super important, man. And that's something that has enriched my life for the better, and like in all aspects, mentally, physically, everything. So if I can help do the same for other people, I'm going to do it, and I'm very fortunate again to have a little platform that I have now to be able to start to do that. So again, being able to work with some really great companies in the space, I would love to be able to magnify that and continue to do that.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
What do you think the people that maybe are on the fence, what do you think are some things that they'll gain through their efforts? You mentioned the mental fortitude,
Mm-hmm.
The ability to connect with nature sitting under a mesquite tree.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people can expect when they get into something like this, into the hunting space?
Man, I would say a much bigger sense of self-reliance.
Yeah.
That's archery, take bow hunting aside and just archery itself, like being able to take, like I've got a handful of like my really close friends that have, been nice enough to give me the opportunity to take them out, and they've invested some money into getting a bow, and being able to take them and show them how to draw a bow back and shoot good groups, like within their first day, is one of those things where it's like, it's a tangible thing. So you can see progress in real time. So you can get a better sense of self-reliance of yourself, and like having that self-confidence is really important. And I think that will bleed out. I know personally that's bled out into other things in my life on a positive note. So I think a better sense of self-reliance, more self-confidence, it could, if you really enjoy it and you stick with it and it's something you really want to work on, you'll have a much better sense of like being able to continually challenge yourself to just show up every day and practice it. And hopefully that turns into, that bleeds into like your fitness as well too. I'm a big proponent. I'm the guy who's always going to tell you, like, if you're having an issue or if you're stressed out, if you're anxious, whatever it is, go work out.
There you go.
You're going to feel better.
Sweat
it
it out.
sucks. Yeah, exactly. It's a catch-22, right? It's like, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy to do it, but like you go out and do it, you feel better. Like that's just sound science. Like you can't get around that, right? So it's like getting out and doing physical things, I think, is super important, whether it's low intensity, like shooting a bow on the shooting range, or going to the gym and getting a really rigorous workout in. All those are going to help to boost your self-esteem and your self-confidence. And I think if you start there and you continually compound those little wins again and just multiply that by time, I mean, you're going to get some really cool things that come out of it. I did 75 hard last year, and that's like a challenge.
Explain what that is.
So it's basically a program that started with First Foreman Andy Frisella. 75 days, you have a list of things that you have to be able to check off, right? Like 2 workouts, one has to be outdoors, no alcohol, stick to a diet, take a progress photo, gallon of water a day. I might be missing 1 or 2 in there, but that was the first time I'd even abstained from drinking for 75 days in a long time. Like, I started drinking in high school, and I had never really taken that long. I never had a drinking problem, but it's like, you go out with your friends on the weekend, you go out, drink, get hungover, and then you feel good for a couple of days, you go back out and you kind of do it over again. And that was the reset that I personally needed. And I mean, like now I don't drink. So it's like, it's been a huge thing a huge impact on my life. And I think that was a really big catalyst for me. And like, okay, I want to double down on what I'm doing with archery and bow hunting. And I mean, like the mental fortitude that you're able to cultivate, and like you're really just building a lot of momentum. Again, like going back to the small wins, you're building these wins and you're tangibly being able to see this list. Like I did it again today, day 43. I've been 43 days in and I've knocked this out every single time. Like you're stacking a lot of momentum on there, and you're not going out and drinking, getting foggy headed, being lazy on a Sunday or Saturday or Monday, if it's carrying over. And your work's gonna suffer. You're not gonna have enough energy to go and do what you want to do. So it's like that for me was super pivotal in what I'm doing in the space now. So I mean, I would say like if you can get into a program like that and really try to test yourself there, man, that's something that like I've pushed to a lot of friends. Like, hey man, if you're in a rut and you need a reset, like try this. And I've seen some friends go through it and do it and have some success, and it's been really cool to see. Even friends that don't go through the whole program, like you do see a big shift mentally with them as well too. So again, like it's really just stacking those little wins every single day and just building up your self-confidence, because then you can kind of see what's possible from there.
Right. Prove it to yourself.
Yep. Exactly.
Good, man. All right. I want to land the plane and I want to ask a couple questions.
Yeah.
The final questions. If you could give a message to the next generation of stewards, the next generation of land stewards, what would they be? What would a couple of those things be? Those that will be stewards of the land. What would that look like?
Think long term. What kind of legacy do you want to leave for your children and your neighbors, people around you? The whole reason why we do this is to build a good life for our family and our friends and the people within our extended network, right? At least that's what I look at it as. Like if I was, a large landowner, like that's what I would be wanting to do it for, right? I would be wanting to be able to build that for my family so that they have it for generations to come. So think long term. What are you putting into the ground to grow your food plots? What are you putting in the bellies of the animals that you're feeding, right? Those may short-term work, but long-term have a devastating effect on the land and on your health in general. So I would say think long-term and think about what you want to leave for your family.
Beautiful. Well said.
Thank you.
All right, man. That's it.
Colton, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is fun.
Thank you, partner.